Who, what, where, why, and how? The answers are inside health.
Coming up, a revolutionary new drug that helps patients fight chronic myeloid leukemia has been launched. Glyvac normalizes the blood count in patients and has made almost 90% of users disease-free within 12 months. Dying to be beautiful, millions of African women bleach their skin completely unaware of the risks this poses to their health. Some women have suffered appalling injuries in the quest for beauty. Others have died. And over half the world's population doesn't have either safe drinking water or proper sanitation. The international community pledged to halve these figures by 2015. But to achieve these targets, safe water will have to be provided to an additional 250,000 people and sanitation facilities to 384,000 every day over the next 14 years in Africa, Asia and Latin America alone. And one of the most serious threats to the world's water supply is about to be literally blown apart. The waterborne parasite, Cryptosporidium, infects as many as 500 million people each year, causing severe diarrhea, vomiting and fever. And finally, we pay homage to an era of space exploration indirectly responsible for countless medical breakthroughs, from CAT scans and MRIs to life-saving pacemakers. The search for answers continues. Massachusetts Institute of Technology is world-renowned for its top engineering programs. But within this unique community exists an ugly reality. Over the last decade, 8 students have committed suicide, 6 of them in the last 4 years. In response to these alarming statistics, MIT has developed a new website to provide mental health information to students. Other programs include expanding mental health services into the evening hours when students can better access them, providing unlimited mental health coverage, and forming teams of experts who will visit and get to know students in their dormitories, fraternities and sororities. It's no guarantee that suicides won't happen again, but as a community, MIT is working harder to try to prevent them. Baseball players are notorious for it, but a surprising number of men and teenagers, about 6% of the American population according to experts, use smokeless tobacco. It's a habit often kept secret. Christopher Anderson had a pinch of tobacco in his gums from morning till night, and sometimes he'd even swallow it to keep his habit hidden. After almost 20 years of dipping, he's enrolled in an 8-day spit tobacco cessation program here at the Mayo Clinic in Rochester, Minnesota. With the help of 3 nicotine patches, counseling and encouragement from friends, Christopher, who hopes to become a Catholic priest, is determined to kick the habit. Dr. Lowell Dale and his colleagues at the program design individual treatment plans for each patient. Whether it's dip or chew, Dale says smokeless tobacco can actually be more addictive than cigarettes. It also boosts the risks for cancers of the mouth, throat and stomach. A dipper's exposure to nicotine is as great, if not greater, than people who smoke, according to Dale. The program prepares participants to fend off tobacco's temptation once they re-enter the real world. When he leaves the clinic, Anderson knows it won't be easy. His message to others: just don't start. Heart disease is one of the more serious side effects of tobacco addiction, but genetics have predisposed Jason West to it due to a family history of excessively high cholesterol. However, groundbreaking research at Duke University Medical Center is using his genetics to individualize a treatment to target or prevent atherosclerosis, the most common form of heart disease. Researchers have established a genetic data bank that compares healthy vascular tissue to disease-prone tissue to better understand how genes are linked with actual risk. Dr. Pascal Goldschmidt, chief cardiologist at Duke University Medical Center, hopes this research will help specialized treatment, which at present consists of a powerful 5-drug cocktail that has side effects and doesn't always work. The genetic work informs the researchers which drugs really work on a specific patient. For patients like Jason, this research could provide a roadmap not only for his treatment, but for future generations. And dying to be beautiful. Millions of African women bleach their skin, completely unaware of the risks this poses to their health. Some women have suffered appalling injuries in the quest for beauty. Others have died. Powerful toxins and hydroquinone and mercury are found in many skin products. Despite being banned in North America and Europe, Western manufacturers are allowed to export them to Africa and Asia. Kenyan skincare consultant Irene Nyorje blames makers for not spelling out the risks to their customers. She says the containers bear no warnings, no information, alleging they're actually designed to take advantage of ignorant African women. The injuries affect many organs, including the brain and kidneys, along with teeth and gums. Even the less serious side effects can lead to a woman being ostracized. Yet many men pressure women that lighter skin is more beautiful. Advertisers sell the image that light skin is the secret to success. African governments are beginning to wake up to the magnitude of this problem, but enforcing a ban is proving difficult. Until the perception of what is and isn't beautiful changes, millions of women will continue to risk destroying their natural beauty, their health, and ultimately their lives. 10,000 patients around the world have been involved in clinical trials using Glyvac. Glyvac targets specific cancer cells, and trial results have been dramatic. It's a specifically targeted drug which can be taken by mouth and has very few side effects. A typical patient who suffers from chronic myeloid leukemia has been using Glyvac for a year. The drugs had an amazing impact on her disease and her quality of life. 6 weeks after starting Glyvac, she was back at work and running a life as before the diagnosis. Previous treatment failed to help her. She's positive about the use of Glyvac, which has had little side effect. Chronic myeloid leukemia is one of the 4 most common types of the disease and is responsible for almost 20% of all adult leukemia. While about 1.1 billion of the world's population still don't have access to safe water and 2.4 billion don't have adequate sanitation, the international community pledged in The Hague to halve these figures by 2015. But simple arithmetic shows that to achieve these targets, safe water will have to be provided to an additional 250,000 people and sanitation facilities to 384,000 every day over the next 14 years in Africa, Asia, and Latin America alone. Some governments are moving away from acting as providers of water services towards regulation and encouraging the private sector to take over supply and maintenance. But financial returns are often low, especially for sanitation, and customers are not used to paying the full costs. In developed countries, about 70% of funding presently comes from governments, but this is usually spent on those who already have water, such as city dwellers. In some countries with a mainly rural population, communities are successfully managing water and sanitation facilities themselves through water user groups and associations. Meanwhile, around 6,000 people, most of them children, continue to die every day from common diarrhea, caused by the bacteria and parasites in unsafe drinking water. Improving drinking water quality is only one of several challenges ministers need to agree on. Irrigation also has hidden costs, including long-term environmental impacts such as waterlogging due to inadequate drainage, depletion of groundwater, and increased salinity of soils that ultimately render cultivation difficult or impossible. Raising the money is one of the main obstacles to action. Just meeting sanitation and clean water targets for the unserved poor by 2015 will mean investing an extra $9 billion a year above the current $16 billion already spent every year. So, also on the agenda at Bonn is who pays? And a scenario drafted by IWMI predicts a 17% increase in water demand for agriculture by 2025, which current data suggests is not sustainable. According to the International Water Management Institute, we need 2 to 5 litres of water daily for drinking, 20 to 50 litres for bathing and other personal needs, but we use 2,000 to 5,000 litres of water every day to produce food. A women's association in southern Sri Lanka is restoring village irrigation systems. starting freshwater fish breeding, rainwater harvesting, a drinking water scheme, and health education groups. Health education alone can be enormously effective, while costing little. Just washing hands with soap and water would cut diarrhea-related deaths by up to a third. NGOs have long realised that progress in rural areas of developing countries comes by empowering women in health and sanitation decisions, as they are the custodians of domestic water supplies. Also on the table in Bonn will be the issue of diffusing potential disputes over shared water rights. Of the world's river basins, 261 cross more than one country. The fear is that as fresh water is at most a regional concern, truly global issues such as energy and climate change could well steal the bill. It looks ugly, and it's a global health threat in water supplies. It's cryptosporidium. This is an artist's impression, and this is the real thing under a microscope, a hardened shell protecting dangerous parasites. With up to 500 million cases worldwide each year, some of which can be fatal, it's a major public health issue. Researchers at the Australian National University in Canberra have now developed a powder which removes the bug from water. It blasts away the protective shell, which protects cryptosporidium with a success rate of 99.99%. Comparing this image with the one on the left, it illustrates how the cryptosporidium is blown apart by absorption. The powder is now patented, and the chemists are looking for a commercial partner. In 1993, 400,000 people in the American city of Milwaukee were infected with the parasite, and more than 10 of them died. In our feature story today, we pay homage to an era of space exploration indirectly responsible for countless medical breakthroughs, from CAT scans and MRIs to life-saving pacemakers. Since NASA's earliest days, the cardinal rule of spacecraft design has always been everything destined for orbit must be reliable, strong, ultra-efficient, and as small and lightweight as possible. The result was miniaturization, one of the greatest achievements of the space program, and it led to the development of life-saving devices here on Earth. One of the first was a long-lived cardiac pacemaker introduced in 1973. It was inspired by technologies developed to miniaturize the number of spacecraft systems and subsystems. Improvements to the device have continued over the years, with advanced implantable pacemakers able to restore normal rhythm, detect abnormal rhythms, and shock irregularly beating hearts back to normal. And it's all done automatically. Pacemakers save thousands of lives every year and allow most of their users to resume productive, quality lifestyles. Miniaturization also found its way into fluid control systems of planetary exploration spacecraft. The 1976 Viking mission to Mars used this technology, not only to reach the planet, but to attempt to detect life forms. Remotely controlled equipment scooped up soil samples and injected them with nutrients in precisely controlled amounts to see if those food substances could be metabolized by any life forms. From that technology, the Programmable Implantable Medication System, or PIMS, was developed. The same miniaturized fluid control concept that was used to meter nutrients into Marshall soil samples was soon being used to meter insulin into diabetic bloodstreams. The technology became so precise that doses as small as 1/1,000,000th of a litre could be safely metered out. There are over 2 million insulin-dependent diabetics in the United States. They must adhere to rigid activity schedules and multiple insulin injections daily to prevent life-threatening complications. PIMS was developed for them. In order to talk back to satellites, which is essential for doing repairs, reprogramming, and other operations, NASA developed bidirectional telemetry, and the PIM system uses it to communicate with its implanted components. If a change in blood sugar dictates a different dose, the patient simply dials in the appropriate program on the handheld unit. The information is transmitted to the implant's computer and the dosage is automatically changed. Pacemaker systems began using bidirectional telemetry in 1979, when surgery-free fine-tuning of the device became a medical reality. Models began featuring 28 pacing functions and thousands of programming combinations, accommodating the diverse lifestyles and changing physical condition of its users over time. From the surgeon's workstation at Mission Control, vital functions such as EKG and heart rate can be monitored remotely. Thanks to this technology, an entire life-saving industry now exists. Systems that use biotelemetry are commonplace in hospitals today, allowing a single location to monitor several remotely located patients. Called telemedicine, it went global in 1988 with the joint US and USSR effort to provide Armenian earthquake victims with expert medical assistance via satellite. Before spacecraft could land on the Moon, potential landing areas had to be mapped and thoroughly studied. To complete this extensive task, electronic images of the lunar surface were sent to Earth as digital data and then computer-enhanced at ground stations. That technology is called digital image processing, and in the early 70s it became the basis for Landsat satellites used to map the planets and natural resources. The results were clear images of the Earth's features in hues of false colours. Landsat maps are used to monitor erosion, urban growth, environmental changes, and to identify certain types of crops, timber, and mineral resources. The technology was transferred to medicine in the early 1980s as the integral imaging components of computer axial tomography scanners, or CAT scans, and magnetic imaging scanners, MRIs. Since then, these techniques have literally revolutionized diagnostic imaging. CAT scans make images of parts of the body that were previously difficult or impossible to obtain. They produce pictures 10 to 20 times more detailed than regular X-rays and can detect many conditions which couldn't be seen on standard X-rays previously. MRI can see through bone, in many cases revealing tissue or growth that was previously obstructed, and it does so without the use of X-rays or injected contrast materials. MRIs also produce the most detailed images of soft tissue. Digital imaging and processing technology is also used to perform over 500,000 balloon angioplasties done in the US alone each year. The non-surgical technique reduces cholesterol deposits that obstruct blood flow in coronary arteries, restoring normal flow and preventing heart attacks. This requires the cardiologist to guide a balloon-tipped catheter through the artery by viewing images on a monitor. The high-fidelity imaging systems that resulted from the growing demand for this procedure have allowed physicians to achieve greater precision and speed. This not only reduces trauma to the patient, but also maximizes the chances for a successful procedure. Skylab, America's first long-term presence in space. But scientists discovered that astronauts lose bone mass during long flights at a rate of 1% a month. The challenge now is to discover a countermeasure. That is a method of preventing accelerated bone loss seen in astronauts on long-duration flights. On Earth, the same research would take 10 years, while the data would be nowhere near as useful. There's no doubt that the research findings could result in a treatment or cure for osteoporosis much sooner and help us better understand normal bone loss due to aging. By age 70, we've all lost 35% of our skeleton. During the first 3 to 5 years after menopause, women will lose an additional 2 to 4% per year. Studying bone loss in space will greatly enhance our knowledge base back here on Earth. When NASA's artists imagined what the International Space Station would look like someday, their space scientists already knew how important it would be to use to study bone density. Results of the study would help develop countermeasures for astronauts' eventual return to Earth and to prepare for human exploration and perhaps even colonization of other planets. How much bone loss can occur in the absence of gravity before irreversible damage is done? What exercises and dietary changes can retard or prevent bone loss? And what medications might help encourage new growth? These are questions to be answered by conducting extended stay research on board the International Space Station. Space shuttles also allow us to study human adaptation to space for short durations. One of the problems astronauts experience during shuttle flights is space adaptation syndrome. On Earth, it's called motion sickness. Many of us suffer from it, but in orbit, time must be used as efficiently as possible. Considerable efforts are being made in the hope of finding a treatment and eventually a cure for this condition. NASA is currently doing extensive research aboard its shuttle flights. Microgravity provides the perfect and only reliable testbed because the vestibular system's reliance on gravity for stimulation biases all ground-based results. Space removes that bias. These and many other investigations will help to answer fundamental questions about humans in space. How can we live healthy, happy, productive lives in microgravity and return to Earth safely and in good health? How will we adapt to long-duration stays in space? What effect does microgravity have on the human body? For many years, this research has been compiled at the Johnson Space Center. It's long been known, for instance, that processing metal alloys, electronic crystals, and organic materials in the absence of gravity can result in stronger, purer, more uniform products. Now that technology is being applied to the processing of biological materials in microgravity. Protein crystals are being grown in space because only there do they result in large, whole, perfectly shaped materials. These crystals are being used to advance the research efforts that could help us finally understand why tumors spread and what designer drugs can be manufactured to block them. The bioreactor is a new ground-based 3D tissue growth chamber that provides mechanical superiority over earlier models by partially simulating the microgravity of space here on Earth. The end product is higher fidelity tissue that better represents the structure and function of the original tissue. Pacemakers, remote patient monitoring systems, CAT scans, MRIs, biotelemetry and bioreactors, all an unequivocal result of NASA's spaceflight efforts, and yet they were never the original goal. Through necessity, ingenuity and much trial and error, the lessons learnt up here have led to essential everyday technology and medical breakthroughs for us all.